Don't forget about your thirds, especially for a big bouquet like this, in order to help you better size down to a smaller canvas if you're working on a smaller canvas. Because we have a tendency to think that we have a lot more room than we have, as I've said many times. So let's say if the very far tulip is way over here, this highest tulip is over here, and then the front tulip over here, then, you know, I've got a large arch here. I can kind of bring it in a bit, but I've got a pretty large arch of the tulips before it goes into the vase. So maybe the vase is up here. We've got the round part of the vase here, and then the bottom of the vase, and then we've got this tulip in front, really overlapping in front of the vase as well. Okay, alrighty. Now I want to use my paper towel right away and start wiping out for some of the light of the vase and the foliage of the tulips. As I said earlier, the most challenging part to me about tulips, I mean, not that painting them as a whole isn't challenging, but the most challenging part to me is really the fact that they do, I mean, they're such living organisms, so they like to move with the light. They might start opening up quite a bit under the light, you know, things like that. So this is also part of the benefit of working, you know, quickly, wet into wet as well. One of the most important parts I feel for tulips is to get any of the that beautiful sort of curve that tends to happen with the weight of the tulip, or any movement, you know, like this one's kind of curving up. Now, remember not to get anything too close to these corners, so I'm actually kind of pulling everything in a little bit tighter than what I'm seeing, because this is a painting. In the end, this is a painting, and it has to look good compositionally on the painting, not just match necessarily what's really happening here in front of me. So since these are kind of a cooler red, they're a very pink red, so I'm going to go a little bit warmer tone in the background with my red oxide and black, and start to kind of frame out these little tulips. The reason why I think these are easier to paint is because they're a very simple shape, especially whenever they're closed. We may get one that opens up, and we'll see how that looks and if that's beneficial to the picture. Just to kind of maybe show you how you would paint one that's a little more open. But even whenever unless they're like fully open, and I would say you probably don't want to paint it at that point. But they're really like a little egg shape, you know, a little cylinder shape. So you can kind of block them in almost like little little rectangles, or little, you know, little eggs or cylinders. So always trying to think in terms of simple geometric shapes. What's the structure of this particular kind of object? That's always going to be more beneficial to me. It simplifies things. It makes it easier to paint and understand, because I know that I can paint a cylinder, and I know that I can paint a cube, you know, or a rectangle. And so if I can paint those things, then I can paint a tulip. Okay, so just figuring out sort of the glass base here. I'm going to put some of this background color in there a little bit more. It is lighter than the background, but doesn't need to be that much lighter. I also don't know how important it is right now to have the perfect shape, but we'll start there. And then cast shadow on the ground plane, just kind of the same color as the background color. I'll figure out where the we'll figure out where the tulip in front's going to go. I think I am going to put this table edge in because it's kind of nice to have. We've got this cast shadow on the front of the table edge from the leaf coming over it. So maybe that tulip is going to come like here. Okay, maybe let's cast shadow here somewhere. You know, in the beginning, you're just warming up, so you're not quite 100%, you know, you're not able to take in so much detail, really is what it is. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's just we tend to do better by focusing on the big picture, in my opinion, and then going for the more details. So as far as like knowing, okay, I need to put this exactly there or this exactly there. I mean, that's part of the beauty of still life, is you don't have to worry quite so much about being exact. I mean, totally exact. You know, maybe landscape might be one of the genres that you can actually be even less exact. But okay, I think that's probably pretty good. Maybe this needs to go a little bit wider. We'll figure that out a little bit more once we get into paint. But I think that's, you know, the general idea. We've got the center vase. We've got these tulips sort of spilling out. You can kind of get a better sense of some of this. I love the leaves on tulips. Those are so cool. Just such a pretty color too. There's kind of some dark in here in between the tulips, so maybe get a little bit of that. Some of those dark accents in there. That would be helpful. Okay. I want to do horizontal strokes on the tabletop plane. Already kill any of this white that may cause a distraction from the lights. Okay. We've got one little tulip that's sort of hidden back there, back behind a leaf. Just trying to map this out a little bit more. Okay. All right. I say we go straight for those greens. I'm going to mix some of that phthalo green cool into my background color mixture right away, just to get like a warmer green, a little more red in there. Let's go ahead and just use this big brush to kind of map in some of these greens. Again, I tend to like to work dark to light, and actually in oil paint, that's actually the best way. You want to kind of work thin to thick and warm to cool and dark to light. Just want to keep adding a little bit of each of all these mixtures. The yellow, cad yellow deep, the Chinese orange, the red oxide. Just get some nice big brush strokes here for that foliage. Boom, boom. Okay. And I do like to just adjust and alter my mixture a little bit as I go, so that it doesn't all just look like one mixture, one color. And let's do a little darker version of that here. And it's actually kind of nicer if you don't overmix the colors. So just, you know, try to get in the habit of just barely mixing stuff together. You know, so that you get little striations of yellow or red, or, you know, something, a little piece that maybe has more of the cooler blue-green, you know, stuff like that. Just is more exciting in a painting that way. A little darker here where there's a little cast shadow from the leaf in front. Okay. See if there's a little piece of dark here. So anywhere where these leaves are, they're pretty cylindrical as well. You know, they're really kind of folding over on themselves, so the insides of them go darker. Well, that was actually lighter. How'd that happen? There we go. Any cast shadows, of course, just kind of hunting for those where they can go a little bit darker and warmer, like the background. Just checking to see if there's anywhere else I need to kind of push a little more dark or get a little more. You know, the other neat thing about these is there's like a little, almost like a texture in a way to these leaves. So sometimes you can kind of use your brush strokes or kind of scrub through to get that with the bristles. And that's kind of why I like these hog hair bristle brushes, is that you can get some interesting texture versus a soft hair brush. It's really hard to do. Also, the hog hair bristles just hold so much paint and lay so much paint down. All right. You know me and my highlights. I like to get them on pronto. Just helps me, it puts in an extreme light, one of my lightest lights, and one of my finer details. Kind of lets me know where I'm going to the finish. All right, now I'm going to switch to a little bit smaller brush. I'm going to start mixing up a little lighter green, adding the cadmium lemon to this mix. Just slow down a bit. And really look to see, okay, where does that show up? Where does some of that show up, so that I can try to minimize reworking. As you're using up the mix, add more to it. Again, same advice as with the dark greens. We want to not totally overmix stuff. So there's some edges of light on some of these here. You know, little pieces that are catching the light. I'm adding white and Naples to get lighter and cooler. Here's one right next to that cast shadow. So you might think, well, start with the flowers, then do the leaves, but I actually think, you know, we want to be our most focused by the time we get to those flowers, or have as much skin in the game as we can at that stage. And also, I think, you know, there's more green than there is flower, right? So it kind of makes sense to do all the greens so that you don't have to paint in the flower and then have to paint around it. It's always a good idea to kind of paint what's around or what's behind first, so that you can try to minimize having to do everything twice. I mean, there's some of that, there's just no getting around, but if you can kind of think it through a little bit, it'll kind of help your process. Okay, and then one of the qualities that I think is really interesting about these leaves is there's kind of like a wibbly wobbliness. You know what I mean? Like there's sort of a waviness to the leaf here that I'm seeing in some cases. And there's kind of only one way to do that, you know. Use your brush to try to intimate that type of texture or movement. Some of these sharper, smaller, finer tips. You could switch to a smaller brush as well. Okay, Good. Oh wait, there's a little bit of where the stem is here. Now I would not recommend, there's always a little cast shadow right underneath the head of the flower and the stem, so don't ever start your stem right at the connection of the flower. Start it further down, you know, the light on the stem, because, and again, same thing here, don't let this run into that, just let it dissipate. Nobody's gonna realize that you did that. I mean, you guys will, because I'm telling you. But you know, there's always a little bit of cast shadow there. Same thing on this one, there's always going to be a little bit of cast shadow. Of course, I don't even have the head on that one yet, but you always want to leave a little bit of space there. It's just, again, easier. And yeah, you know, I've done that, I've made that mistake so many times that of course I know not to do it now, because it just causes too much work. It's too hard to work around stuff. It also creates a hard edge there and a sharp value contrast, and you don't want that there. All right, now I'm going to start with one local color for the tulip, the actual flowers. I'm going to do alizarin crimson and white, and then a little bit of cab red light. I want it nice and colorful. I do have to use some white in this because these two colors together are going to be without white is going to be way too hot. I'm just going to block in this whole shape. Then I'll come back in with like shadow color and light accents. I just want to think about that sort of that cylinder shape or that rectangle, cube shape, you know, however that makes sense to you. Really just one brush stroke is the beginning of it. Can see the beauty of not over mixing that alizarin for sure right there, and then maybe just on my brush pure alizarin for this darker shadow stuff. You can only do one edge at a time, so you know, you might do the bottom edge, then the top edge. Crisp edges. So you can see that had a little more white in it, very, very slightly more white. And this is where you have an overlap, where one petal, this petal is overlapping in front of that one. So that's where you want to have a crisper edge. Voila! It's like magic. Okay. Let's go back to the white and the cab red light again here. There's a little piece of light overlapping there. Okay, this one and back. Again, gotta love that beauty of not over mixing that color. I'm also seeing a little violet. So actually, let me do some ultramarine blue with the alizarin. Start to get some striations of violet in here. Barely touch the canvas. Just glide the paint on with your brush. But barely, you don't want to be scrubbing the canvas. Don't worry about these contours so much. If you can get them at this point in the game, do it, but if you can't, come back with background color. You know, meaning all these little cut-ins, these little cut-in shapes. Now this little guy, or girl, this little beautiful girl right here, she is at a really interesting angle to us. She's gonna test us a little bit. She's gonna say, haha, can you do it? Can you do this? Yes, we can. All right, because I'm sitting on the shadow side of it, of her, and that means I see on the shadow side, instead of like here, I'm seeing light, all light, light, and then the shadow side is, say, underneath, or on the right hand side, you know, like this piece goes into shadow here, or underneath, you know, again on the shadow. So in this case, I'm seeing on the shadow side this whole plane of the cylinder. And then because it's a flower, well, first let me explain. So this is like a cube, so the top of the cube is in light, but it's a very small amount of light, very narrow, because it's the top of the cube and then the inside of the flower right here getting light. Small little area getting light. Small little area. Perhaps even just the very top of that. Now, the interesting part about this is that light petals are and leaves are thin, and they're like little pieces of colored paper or stained glass. So whatever the color of the flower is, just like a grape, if we're sitting on the shadow side, darn, I put way too much in, but if we're sitting on the shadow side, we're going to get that glow, right? The light glowing through. And so that's where using those cadmiums right there is so fun. Just like painting a grape, because it gets the glow passing through. I can also see some down here underneath. I might play that up a little bit more. Okay. Now, I'm going to switch now even to my smaller brush and start to look for more of some highlights, and I'm seeing those as more of like a violet. So I'm going to do some blue, some white, and let's do a little bit of that alizarin. Okay, maybe we'll take it from there. Kind of like a cool light on top. That might be a little too strong of a value change. Okay, let's come down here. This one's important because it's down in front. Curve it with the curve of the cylinder. Where's another one we can see? Here, this little rim light. Don't spread your paint piles out too much, or you're going to be sorry because you won't be able to pick up any paint on the tip of your brush. So keep those paint piles. I'm going to have to see how these two edges now are running into each other, and the stem is actually in front of the tulip. So I'm going to have to come back with that stem color and make sure that that stem overlaps. Same thing here. See how all of that's starting to run together. Actually, since I'm looking at it and I'm seeing what to do, let's just do it right now. Or try to. Let's try it. So really, this one is just going to be like a little piece of color back behind there. So I don't really need to worry quite so much about the form. And let's just take this off the canvas. By the time you get that close to the edge of the canvas, you're actually kind of better off just cropping it off so that it looks intentional rather than accidental. Ho ho. Sneaky. We've got like a light one back here, back behind all these darker ones. I think that would be nice to get in. Bring in some more light, because we've got a lot of color happening in this painting scenario, but not just a ton of light neutral values. When you're in that situation, you can push local color out of some of the lights and add more white to them. Or like the glass and the tabletop plane might be a nice place as well to push more light. Now these really are great for directional pull, but then coming back over with like some shorter strokes over top. So long linear strokes like that always, the part that has to play in a painting is direction. So movement, direction, come here, move here. Whereas shorter strokes going across the form is all about form. And it's all about slowing the eye down. So you could do long linear strokes like that and then come back and do some form strokes on top. We're missing the little stem here. Okay, and then this one, we see the white part. It's kind of a coolish color. Curve it with the shape of the tulip. It's another good area to get in some light neutral accents, which this painting needs. Just as a reminder, every painting, you want it to have a light, a bright, a dark, and a dull. Maybe we'll invent one in here. Sure, why not? And then, like this we can indicate this one as well. It's in shadow, so it's got to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to put a lot of that green in there with it, with the white, to kind of get sort of a cooler, non-color gray going on in there. Okay. Carving out any shapes clearer that need to be clearer. You know, pushing contrast around areas of interest that need it. So maybe like here, pushing that contrast there. All right, let's take some stock here as to what's happening. Okay, need to do a little more polish on the glass, a little more finishing on it. So let's go back to background color, black and red oxide, and then let's lighten that a hair, just a hair now. Get a little bit of light in here. Don't be afraid to paint over some of these leaves, stems that we put in. Light, remember, with glass or anything translucent or transparent, you're going to have the lighter side is actually what should be on the shadow side. So something kind of light, and then I'm seeing a nice warm glow here as well on this glass. I feel like I'm talking really softly on this one. It's like, and I'm seeing a warm light here on this glass. Oh, okay. This is an interesting area because everything's coming together. So I think I need to use the dark shadow side of that petal there on that tulip to kind of get an overlap. This is in front of that. So it's most important that we get that sensation that this is in front of that. So that may mean, you know, letting go of some details back here. And then increasing details up in the front.